Awesome. What's up, everybody? How you doing? All right, somebody said here. That's good. That's good. Hey, if you're new around here, I'm new too. I'm right there with you. My name's Petey, and honored to be with you guys, man. Loving being here, loving being at Red Rock, loving being in Colorado Springs, and excited for what we're going to jump into today. I want to, before we jump into the message, I want to celebrate something awesome that we came together and did collectively as a church over the past month. We had a big year-end giving initiative that we talked about all month of December. If you were here, you heard us talking about it like crazy. And because of your generosity, we got to do some really, really cool things this past week. So through the generosity that we had throughout the month of December, above and beyond what we typically give financially, we were able to do two really cool things this week. One, we were able to take a check to the Springs Rescue Mission, a great ministry here in our city that houses, feeds, takes care of, and just serves the homeless men and women of our city. And so because of your generosity, we were able to take them a check this week for $6,000, which is just awesome. We can celebrate that. It's great. Absolutely. We're also able to take a check to the leaders of a great ministry called One Love Ethiopia that's serving vulnerable children across the world in Ethiopia, educating them, feeding them, clothing them, empowering their families. Just really, really cool work that they're doing over there. And so we were able to take them a check as well for $6,000 also because of your generosity. So that's $12,000 that we were able to give this week outside of our walls, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so just want to really celebrate that and thank you for your generosity. We were able to take a portion of that as well and just set it aside and prepare for everything that God's going to do at Red Rock this year. We're excited for what 2020 holds. But man, just thanks. Thanks for being a generous church. Y'all are doing incredible things here. Before I even got here, this place is a generous church, and so we're just going to keep going with that. So if you don't currently give financially and you call this place home, you can partner with us in one of four ways. You can give online, you can text your giving, you can download our app, or we got generosity boxes in the back of the room that you can use to give. But man, let's just keep going above and beyond, man. Let's give till it hurts in response to all that Jesus has done for us, all right? So let's be generous, and let's see what God does this year. Now, we're in a message series right now called A Better Question. So we are in Luke chapter 20. If you have a Bible or an app on your phone that has a Bible and you want to get to Luke 20, great. If not, no sweat. I'll have the words here on the screen. But we're going through Luke 20 all month long. And to get us kind of thinking the way that the text is going to get us thinking, I want to ask you a question, okay? The question is this: have you ever been asked a question that you did not want to answer? Okay, go back to the time when you were last asked a question that you did not want to answer. I was recently asked two questions I did not want to answer in the same car ride, okay? I was taking an Uber to the airport at 6 a.m. I was going on a little work trip. This was the end of last year. And Uber ride, 6 a.m. to the airport. I love people. Okay, I do. I love talking to people. 6 a.m. in an Uber, I'm okay with silence. We don't have to talk. I'm never going to see you again, Uber driver. I love you, but we could just not talk. It's okay. It's okay. But he wanted to talk, so we talked. And he asked me two questions, neither of which I really wanted to answer. The first one, you're going to think that's not a hard question to answer. Just answer it. But it's just weird for me, okay? The first question he asked is, what do you do for a living? And you got to know, for me, that's a weird question. Because anytime I tell somebody I'm a pastor, it automatically makes it weird, okay? It's just weird. People, like, as soon as I say it, they go back and, like, rewind the conversation. Like, did I cuss in this conversation? Am I wearing something inappropriate? Like, they just feel super judged as soon as they find, I'm like, I'm not judging you. I'm just like you. I'm thinking more about me than I'm thinking about you, okay? But, like, sometimes I lie, though. Like, no joke. Sometimes when people ask me, I straight up lie about it. I tell them I'm a life coach. And they're like, oh, cool, whatever that is, and just kind of like let it go by. But on this day, I was feeling more honest and holy, and so I told him I was a pastor. The second question he asked was a question that none of us want to have asked by a stranger. And none of us want to really talk about in public, for sure, because it's a very heated question. It's a very charged question. It's a very divided question, and it's a minefield that you just have to try to navigate. The next question he asked at 6 a.m. in an Uber on the way to the airport, he said, so, what do you think about Trump? It's like, come on, man. Come on, you got to do me a solid. Don't ask questions like these at 6 a.m. or ever, right? Because that's a question that's so tricky, right? And so I answer that question the way I answer any political question that ever gets asked to me. I always just say, man, like running the country, being a political authority has got to be a really hard job. Certainly president of the United States got to be a hard job. So I do for the president what I do for every president. I pray for him like crazy, and that's kind of how I answer it. And they normally just do what they really want to do, because what he wanted to do in asking the question was not figure out what I thought about Trump. What he wanted to do is tell me what he thought about Trump, right? So he gave me his passionate, like, rest of the Uber ride speech about Trump, and then we ended, and I never saw him again. But the question that he's asking, and the question that we're all asking, maybe behind closed doors, or maybe in our head, or maybe in our heart, maybe we're talking about with some close confidants that we trust, but especially rolling into 2020, everybody's asking this question: who gets my votes? Who gets my vote? Now, I know what just happened as soon as I said those words. I know some of you are like, my God in heaven, Petey, please tell me you're not talking about politics in church, right? You're like, please don't do it. New guy, please don't talk about politics in church, because we for sure shouldn't mix religion and politics, all right? And I get it. The problem, though, is that we already have. We already have mixed religion and politics. And like, it's already a thing. Like, the movement of Jesus followers, movement of Christianity, and politics in America have just become this intertwined weird thing. And so it's already there. And like, if you're here and you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Jesus, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about, because you have seen how Christians have engaged in the political realm. And this question is actually one of the questions that you've used to keep God at a distance. Because you're like, man, I've seen how Christians answer that question. I've seen how Christians act in this realm. And so, like, I want no part of that. I'm out, right? And for those of us that follow Jesus, like, we just have to know that the world is watching us right now. The world is watching, especially rolling into an intense political season like we're about to roll into. The world is watching how the church and how Christians will respond in the midst of this heated, divisive, crazy political climate that we're in. Now, the beautiful thing for us is that we can de-escalate the whole thing. We can take all the pressure off right now, okay? Because we today get to see how Jesus responded to this question. Because Jesus was asked a question very similar to this. Jesus was asked a question very similar. Jesus was drug into the political arena and drug into this minefield of a question that was going to make someone mad no matter what. And we get to see how Jesus responded to it. And it's a beautiful thing for us. Because if you're here and you do believe in Jesus and you do follow Jesus, that's incredible. Today, we get to see how we should roll coming into this year of 2020. We get to see, like, how we should do things, like how we should carry ourselves. And if you're here and you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Jesus, it's a beautiful thing. Because I think that how Jesus responds to this question is going to help bring clarity to you as far as who Jesus really is and what Jesus is really all about. Crystal clear. So either way, we're good. So we're going to jump in Luke chapter 20, verse 20. Y'all ready? I knew that question would get like 3 yeses, okay? But before I jump into it, for real though, I knew that as soon as I saw that this was the next verse, and you'll see when we get there, this is like just natural what happens in Luke chapter 20. I knew when I said, are y'all ready, that there'd be nobody that says yes. I get it. It's a tense deal. But I'm just telling you, we need to be the kind of church. Our mission statement has the word fearless in it. We're called to fearlessly follow Jesus. We should not be afraid to talk about anything, because Jesus has taught us and shown us the way to go. And so we're not going to be a church that just like dances around on safe topics and like easy stuff. No, man, like, let's talk about what really matters. Let's talk about what people are really thinking about, what's really keeping us from God. Let's go after it. Let's be a fearless church in that. All right, y'all ready for that? Much better. All right, let's go. Verse 20 of chapter 20 starts like this. Watching for their opportunity. Now pause for a second on the word there. If you weren't with us last week, Luke chapter 20 is a chapter where there are these religious leaders who are threatened by Jesus. Jesus has arrived on the scene, and he is teaching and preaching, and everyone's going crazy about Jesus, which means nobody's paying attention to these religious leaders anymore. So their power is threatened, their status is threatened, and so Luke 20 is a chapter filled with these religious leaders asking Jesus very, very tough questions and trying to trap him, okay? Now, we see in this one, it's interesting because they learned from last week. Because it says, watching for meaning the religious leaders' opportunity, the leaders sent spies pretending to be honest men. They paid some dudes off. Like, hey, they're going to know that, like, if we ask the question, they're going to know what our angle is, so we're going to pay you some cash. Go and act like honest men. And they tried to get Jesus to say something that could be reported to the Roman governor so that he would arrest Jesus. Next verse. I love this part. Here's what these honest men that have been paid off say. Teacher, we know that you speak and teach what is right, and you are not influenced by what others think. You teach the way of God truthfully. Can you just hear the butt kissing in there? It's just like, oh man, like I just wish I could see what Jesus was like responding. Like I have to believe Jesus was seeing straight through it. I mean, the butt kissing is so loud in this moment. And right after the butt kissing comes the trap. All right, they kiss the butt, then they lay the trap. Now tell us, they say, after is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, we got to pause here for a long second. Because when we read this, as 21st century Americans, we don't really see the harm in it. Pay taxes, well, yeah, for us, it's an easy equation. You don't pay taxes, you go to jail. So just pay your taxes, man. It's just like an easy, like do the TurboTax thing. They've made it super easy. Just pay your taxes. All right, we'll figure it out. And while no one likes it, no one likes tax day, like we know it's necessary. It pays for things that we need in our country. Kind of keeps things running, right? So just pay your taxes, no big deal. This question, though, was very politically charged. This is a question that for Jesus, this is the 6 a.m. Uber ride question. Okay, this is the question that it doesn't matter how he responds, he is completely hosed right now. Okay, because just think about it from the Jewish perspective. If he says, yes, you should pay your taxes, he validates an evil empire. He validates, I mean, when you go back and study first century history, and you see the Roman Empire for what it was, I mean, it was horrific. An evil, evil, evil regime. People living in horrible circumstances. All kinds of just horrible things behind the scenes. Awful. Jesus is validating an evil empire. Not only that, think about it from the Jews' perspective. Every time they paid a tax to Rome, it was a reminder that they were a defeated people. They once had their own nation. They once had their own king. It was the nation of Israel. They ruled. They had peace. It was great. Now they don't. Every time they pay that tax, it's a reminder that they lost. And that things are not how they believe they should be. So if he says, yes, you should pay taxes to Caesar, he validates the Roman government, the Roman Empire, and the Jews would have turned on him immediately. In fact, they likely would have stoned him and killed him in that moment. Now, on the other hand, if he says, no, you shouldn't pay your taxes, he's for sure going to get arrested and killed. I mean, the minute the Romans hear that there's a well-known teacher who's saying, you don't have to pay taxes anymore, they're arresting him and killing him. I mean, it's over. He either has to validate the government or undermine the government. And either way, he's completely hosed in this moment. It's a very, very difficult situation he's in. Now, the way Jesus responds is so incredible. All right? The first thing he does is it kind of piques your curiosity at first. Look what happens next. It says, he saw through their trickery. I love the word. I love that it has the word trickery. He saw through their trickery. And he said, show me a Roman coin. Give me a coin. Whose picture and title are stamped on it? The Caesar's, they replied. Now, for context, the coin that he pulls out and looks at and that everyone's around kind of watching, all those coins had a depiction of Caesar, and they had the words, Caesar is God, imprinted on the coin. So Jesus is looking at a coin that says, Caesar is God, Jesus, God in the flesh. Like he's visibly looking at how difficult of an issue and difficult of a circumstance he is in right now. What does he do? Does he validate or does he undermine? Now, the way he responds, what happens next, is the most powerful and influential political statement in human history. It has influenced us to this day. Its effects are still being felt. It was so powerful, so influential, and we got to dig into it because there's some substance to it. Here's how he responds. Well, then he said, here it is. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God. So they failed to trap him by what he said in front of the people. Instead, these dudes that were paid off to come and ask this question were amazed by his answer, and they became silent. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. It's powerful, powerful. Now, we got to sit here and really observe what's happening. There's so much going on in these few words. Jesus was so wise, he could take just a few words and turn everyone's mind and heart in the room upside down. But what's almost just as important to note, not just the words that he said, but what he didn't say. What he didn't say is really important, because you got to think, this is the moment where if Jesus wanted to like throw down a dunk on the political scene, this is the alley-oop. Right? Like, this is the moment where he could have told us exactly how to vote. This is the moment where he could have told us exactly how to engage in the political landscape. This is the moment where he could have told us like what issues matter most to him, and like how you should conduct yourself in the midst of an evil government. Like, this is the point where Jesus could have thrown down on the whole thing and given us a specific and prescriptive instruction manual on how, as followers of Jesus, to handle ourselves in the political world. But he doesn't. He doesn't. Instead, he backs away, and he gives a principle for us to consider. And it's interesting. And Jesus knew that if he stepped in and started getting specific, it was going to go bad. Because Jesus knew that when it comes to politics, y'all, it's complicated. It's complicated. It's not as easy as it looks. How many of you, by show of hands, have ever put together IKEA furniture? They make it like you should be able to put it together if you can do Legos. I mean, they don't even give us words on the instruction manual. It's like, insert screw, put particle board on. 5 hours later, and you've punched through all the particle boards, and you're ready to like go burn IKEA down. You know, it's not as simple as it looks. It's complicated. It's complicated. And see, Jesus knew that when it came to the business of sinful people, governing sinful people, it was going to end up being sinful. It was going to end up being crazy. It's messy. Like, there's no clear right and wrong way to do it at times. Like, in our case, there's no political party that perfectly aligns with the heart of God. It's complicated. It's messy. It's difficult. It's hard to say exactly how to do it. And then you throw another wrench into it. You throw the wrench in that there are good people on both sides of the aisle who see it completely different. There are good people on both sides of the aisle. You know that, right? There are good, Jesus-loving, God-fearing, amazing people on both sides of the aisle. And if you don't know that, you need to get some different friends that are not just like you, okay? You need to hang out with some different people. Because there are good people who see it different. There are crazy people on both sides of the aisle, and there are sane people on both sides of the aisle. There are cruel, greedy people on both sides of the aisle, and there are compassionate, good, loving people on both sides. Like, it's complicated. And people see it different. I'll never forget one of my favorite stories of preaching from the church that I'm coming from in Indiana. I was preaching at this one service, and it was a service where it was very similar to this. It was just packed out. Like, very few open chairs. Everyone's just sitting right next to each other. And I remember in the second row that day, there were two guys sitting next to each other. They did not know each other, but they had to sit next to each other because there were no open seats. And these two guys are sitting next to each other. They don't know each other, okay? But I know them. And I'm friends with both of them on Facebook. And I see what they post on Facebook. And I know that if these guys knew who each other really was, they would realize that they're sitting next to their proclaimed enemy. I mean, like, on the one hand, you've got, like, the crazy, like, right-wing guy that's, like, Fox News, Trump's the man. You've got the CNN guy on the left who's, like, super left-wing, Trump's the worst. They're sitting next to each other. And they're both singing and clapping and raising their hands and loving Jesus and praying and taking notes during the sermon. And I'm just sitting there thinking, oh, my gosh, this is perfect. If they knew, there would be a fight in the parking lot after church. And I would super be there for it. I would be right there. Telling you, if there's ever a fight in the parking lot at Red Rock, I'm here for it. If there's a scene, I want to be there. But, like, good people on both sides of the aisle. Good people who just see it different. And honestly, flip the tables for a second. Not only do sometimes we not know what to do with politics, we don't know how to engage with it. It's just complicated. Turn the tables for a second. The political world does not know what to do with Jesus. Nobody knows what to do with Jesus. I mean, most people pick and choose from Jesus what they want to fit their agenda. I love how my friend Caleb Kaltenbach put it on social media a couple weeks ago. He said this. There it is. Yep. Jesus was, and I love this so much, too progressive for conservatives, too conservative for progressives, too radical for moderates, and too moderate for radicals. No one knows what to do with him right? And he doesn't fit perfectly into anyone's political ideology or anyone's party perfectly. And so Jesus, instead of giving us a prescriptive and specific instruction manual on what to do and on how to vote, instead he gives us this principle. He says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. And it's such a Jesus move, right? It's such like amazing, incredible baller Jesus move. Because instead of validating the government or undermining the government, Jesus actually did both. He's like, if you think I'm going to tick off just one side, I'm going to tick off both. In one statement, he both validates the need for the government and he also undermines it. He says you should give to Caesar what is Caesar's. You should pay your taxes. You should be a good citizen. You should be a thoughtful citizen. You should seek the best for your community, you should pray for your leaders. I mean, you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's all very clear as to how we're supposed to engage as citizens. The only time you ever see the disciples of Jesus in the New Testament breaking the law is when they said you can't talk about Jesus anymore. It's like, all right, sorry, we can't obey that one. But for the rest of it, they were just good citizens. They loved their neighbors. They paid their taxes. They were like good. They seek the welfare of their community and their city. Like we should give to Caesar what is Caesar's. We should be good. We need order. We need order. When God created the world, back in Genesis, he says to Adam and Eve, here are the fish and the birds and the animals and the land and the plants. Governance. Bring order to chaos. See, like, because humanity flourishes when there is order in the midst of chaos. See, like, we need government. Like, he validates the need for it, but at the same time, he undermines it. Because make no mistake about it, everyone that was there when he said this knew what had just happened. He looked at a coin that said, Caesar is God. And the next words out of his mouth were, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. The coin says Caesar is God. I'm telling you, Caesar's Caesar. God is God. Let me be clear. There's only so far that you can allow the government authorities to rule and to govern and tell you what is true and right. There's only so. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But Caesar's not God. You got to give to God what is God's. Be a thoughtful citizen, but there's something else. There's something that's greater. There's a bigger question. There's something that should be reserved. There's something that you shouldn't give to the political world. There's something that you shouldn't entrust to the government. There's something that you should give to Caesar, and then there's something that you should keep in reserve and give it to God. See, the question that Jesus comes along and asks is not who gets my vote. It's a way better question than that. Jesus comes along and asks this question: who has my heart? Who has my heart? Who does my ultimate allegiance belong to? Who does my ultimate loyalty belong to? What's the thing that just gets my heart beating? What's the thing that keeps me up at night? What's the thing that brings me great joy and great despair? Who has my heart? And my baby girl, Tatum, she's 3. By the way, if you don't like kid illustrations, I'm super sorry. I've got 3 young kids, and my life outside of church is young children. So it's just get ready for some kid illustrations. But my daughter, Tatum, I love her to death. She's my favorite. I know who has... Don't tell my sons. I know who has her heart. And it's not mommy, and it's not daddy, and it's not Jesus. It's food. My girl wakes up in the morning, and we'll go in to get her out of her sweet little baby bed, and the first words out her mouth are not, good morning, daddy, good morning, mommy. First words out her mouth, daddy, what we having for breakfast? Like, oh, we're having cereal. Okay, she finishes her cereal. The minute that last bite is swallowed, next words, daddy, what we having for lunch today? She thinks about food nonstop. Food has her heart. It's what makes her the happiest and the most sad. It's what gives her the most joy and the most pain. I mean, she just loves food. Food has her heart. I'm praying that one day she finds Jesus, but right now it's just food. But like, what is that? What is it for you? Like, what has your heart? What's the thing that you wake up thinking about? Like, what's the thing that bothers you the most? What's the thing that gets you the most passionate, the most upset, or the most excited? Like, who has your heart? Because that's the question that matters. I love how Proverbs chapter 4 puts it. It says this: guard your heart, the place where you find your purpose and your meaning. Like, guard what you aim your heart at. Guard your heart above all else. It's the most important thing. Because from it, your heart will determine the course of your life. It'll determine the direction of your life. It'll determine your peace. It'll determine your purpose. Like, you have to guard the aim of your hearts above all else. And we just need to have a little confession time, a little group therapy time as followers of Jesus. If you're not a follower of Jesus, you can just kind of sit back and watch this family meeting. As followers of Jesus, we got to just have a little confession therapy time that we have a very ugly history of giving our hearts to Caesar. We have a very ugly history of giving our hearts to earthly kingdoms and earthly leaders and trusting that they will provide our ultimate redemption, trusting that they will provide our ultimate safety, trusting that they will provide our ultimate purpose. We have an ugly history of it. And we got to stop. We have to repent of that. Like collectively, we got to say that's not what, like, Caesar does not get our hearts. And this is where so much gets out of whack, man, because when you give Caesar your heart, when your heart is so set on an earthly kingdom and an earthly leader being the thing that ultimately redeems and rescues us, you know what you do with people who disagree with you? You make them out to be the enemy. You make them out to be the enemy. And you see, if you'll give your heart to God, if you'll start trusting your heart to Jesus, if you'll make your ultimate allegiance and your ultimate loyalty Jesus, your life starts to fall into place, and all this stuff starts to make sense. Because you start to understand how Jesus rolled with this. You start to understand the way of Jesus. Like, when you give your heart to God, he starts teaching you how to carry yourself in these settings. And you understand that at the heart of Jesus is this truth, that policies matter. Policies matter. Like, don't take this as like some sort of like politics don't matter. Forget the government, don't vote. No, policies matter. And I think this is a message that a lot of us in the room, my age and younger, need to hear. That there's the temptation right now, because things are so crazy and so divisive and so out there, for people to just remove themselves and say, forget it. No. Policies matter. We should align our political convictions with Jesus as best we know how. And again, it's complicated, and we all see it different. But we should take time to make sure that our convictions are as close as we can tell to the heart of Jesus. And then we should vote our convictions. We should be active. We should be thoughtful citizens, because policies can make a difference in people's lives. I love how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put it. He said this. He said, "It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can stop him from lynching me." I mean, there are things that can actually change the quality of people's lives. And as followers of Jesus, we owe it to our brothers and sisters, to the people. We owe it to our country. We owe it to the armed men and women who are serving our country and protecting our freedoms to be thoughtful citizens. Because policies matter. But when you start giving your heart to God, not to Caesar, when you start putting your ultimate loyalty and trust into him, and you start waking up thinking about him, you start letting him guide you and teach you, you see that policies matter, but oh my goodness, people matter more. People matter so much more. See, isn't it interesting that Jesus spent next to no time in the political world? Isn't it interesting that Jesus spent next to no time talking about how to vote? Instead, he spent all of his time talking about how to love. Instead of worrying about having political power. And again, people thought Jesus was going to come and take political power. People thought that Jesus was going to come and be the one that restores the nation of Israel and be the king. And Jesus said, "Nah, I'll spend a little time on that, but for the most part, I'll pass on that. I'm going to spend my time with people. And I'm going to love people. And I'm going to talk about loving, and how to love people better." In fact, Jesus didn't give us a manual on how to vote. He didn't give us a specific prescriptive way to do it, but he did get specific and prescriptive on how to love. He was very clear about it. Look at some of these. He says, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." This is the first and greatest commandment. But the second is equally as important. Love your neighbor as yourself. As much as you, love you some person next to you, okay? As much as you think about yourself, think about other people. This is how you love others. Let me tell you how to do it. Like the way you'd want to be treated, the way you'd want to be loved, extend that love to other people. I love the way he puts it in John. He says, "So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other." How did Jesus love us? He stretched out his arms and he died for us. He sacrificed himself. He gave up his rights. He gave up his privileges so that other people could be loved, so that other people could experience grace and forgiveness. See, like, how should we love people? We know how. We don't have to guess. We should sacrifice ourselves. We should give till it hurts. We should love people like crazy, and not just the ones that are easy to love, because Jesus says in Matthew, you should actually love the people that you have labeled as enemies. He said, you've heard the law says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I say, no. Love your enemies. Love the people that are on the opposite side of the aisle. Love the people who see it different than you. Love the people that the world would like you to label as your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you're acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives sunlight to both the evil and the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that, man? Even the corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you're kind only to your friends, how are you different than anyone else? Even the pagans do that. See, he tells us exactly how to love, exactly who to love, and exactly the way. He's very prescriptive and very descriptive about how to love. See, Jesus knew that policies matter, but people matter more. We've got to give our hearts to God in that way. And I'm telling you, the reason Jesus walked like this, the reason Jesus didn't get dragged into the political arena like that and tell us exactly how to do it, the reason he said, no, back up. Policies matter, but people matter more. The reason that was Jesus' MO is that that's actually how you change the world. That's actually how you make the biggest impact in this world, is all of us coming together and saying, we're going to be thoughtful citizens, but our heart belongs to God, and the most important thing is loving the people that are in front of us, loving the person that's in my cubicle at work, loving the person that lives next door to me. The most important thing I've got is love. I've got to love people well. But I'm telling you, that kind of a sacrificial love, that kind of a giving of myself till it hurts love, you can only really get there and sustain it if you have received that kind of self-sacrificial love. You've got to give your heart to God. You've got to give your heart to the one who suffered and died and bled for you, who sacrificed everything for you. And when you wake up and you receive that kind of love, it'll overflow into the lives of others. But you got to give your heart to God. And that's not something I can do for you. That's not something your spouse or your friend can do for you. That's between you and God. And so I want to give you some time to talk to God about that, to talk to him about who has your heart. And maybe for the first time, give your heart to God. Maybe it's you coming back and giving God your heart again and saying, God, I need you to teach me in this. And then, man, wouldn't it be sweet if by the end of this year, after our country goes through this crazy election season, wouldn't it be amazing if people thought of the Red Rock Church family and they didn't think of passionate political stances, but when they think of the people of Red Rock Church, they think of people that love big, that love sacrificially, that do whatever it takes to help people discover Jesus. Man, that's the people we got to be. But it only happens if we give our hearts to God. So I want you to talk to God about that. Let me pray for you. I'll give you a couple minutes to talk to him about it. Jesus, we love you. And we can't do it without you. There is no way we can muster up and sustain the kind of self-sacrificial love that it takes to love our enemies and to love till it hurts. God, we need you. We need your heart. And so, God, right now, I on behalf of our church family and those of us who follow Jesus, God, we just say we're sorry for giving our hearts to earthly kingdoms and earthly leaders. We confess of it, we repent of it, and God, we want to give our hearts back to you. Your word tells us that you bought us at a price, that we are not our own. We were purchased by the blood of Jesus because of his sacrifice. And so we give our hearts to you, God. We ask you to change us, to fill us with your love, to meet us in these moments. And God, I pray for anybody in the room that is maybe talking to you for the very first time right now, that you would help them to know in this moment that you're not a fairy tale, that you're real, that you're there, and that you love them, and that they can trust their hearts to you. They can trust their lives to you. Meet us in these moments, Jesus.